The Hastings Sodbusters are back in action tonight after sweeping their three-game homestand with the Fremont Moo. Tonight, they strike up a new home series against Plainsmen baseball. Hastings is riding a four-game win streak, trying to make it 5 against the Plainsmen tonight. Hastings native Marcus Miller repping his hometown on the bump and throwing strikes. Sodbusters down 2-0 early, though, and the Plainsmen add to their lead in the 6th. Luke Froelich grounds into right. That brings home Kyle Whitaker, and it's a 3-0 game. Busters grab momentum back on this crazy sequence, though. Drew Vega pops out to right. Plainsmen try to gun down the checking runner at home. Throw is off the mark, though, but two Busters end up on the third base bag. Plainsmen work the pickle and go for Matisse Crowell at home. They think they have the out, but ump calls runner interference between second and third. Everybody is safe. That gives Hastings its first run. They use that momentum and walk off the Plainsmen in a 4-3 win.